On May 9, 2015, Minute Maid Park in Houston, Texas, hosted a spectacle that has since become one of the defining nights in modern boxing history. Under the floodlights and in front of a raucous crowd of more than 31,000 fans, Saul Canelo Alvarez returned to the ring to face James Mandingo Warrior Kirkland, a man as dangerous as he was unpredictable. The fight was billed as a clash of power, heart, and will, and the story that unfolded that night was nothing short of ruthless, brilliant, and unforgettable. The atmosphere before the opening bell was charged with a tension that could be felt by everyone inside the stadium. Canelo entered calm, collected, and focused, his trademark composure hiding the storm of violence he was about to unleash. Kirkland, on the other hand, radiated intensity, the look of a man ready to devour whatever lay in his path. If Canelo was the predator waiting to strike, Kirkland was the rabid bull, charging blindly toward his fate. This wasn't just another fight on the calendar. For Alvarez, it was an opportunity to send a message to the boxing world that he was not merely a star, but a superstar. He had only one loss on his record, a defeat at the hands of Floyd Mayweather Jr. in 2013, a bout that many critics used as ammunition to dismiss him as overrated. Since then, however, Canelo had steadily rebuilt his reputation, defeating Alfredo Angulo in a demolition performance and edging past the slick Erislandy Lara in a fight that tested his patience and adaptability. Now, against Kirkland, Alvarez sought not only to win, but to dominate in a way that would leave no questions unanswered. To truly appreciate what unfolded that night, one must understand who James Kirkland was. Born in Austin, Texas, Kirkland was not the typical polished fighter molded in the amateur ranks. He was a brawler, a street-hardened warrior whose boxing style mirrored his tumultuous life outside the ring. Nicknamed the Mandingo Warrior, Kirkland had a reputation for relentless aggression, knockout power, and an unwillingness to back down from anyone. His professional record leading into the fight was impressive: 32 wins, 28 of them by knockout. Yet his career had always been overshadowed by turmoil. In 2003, Kirkland was convicted of armed robbery and served 2 years in prison. In 2009, he was imprisoned again, this time for possession of a firearm while on probation. His brushes with the law, combined with a volatile personality, made him as much a figure of controversy as of admiration. Inside the ring, his reckless abandon won him fans, but it also made him vulnerable. Outside of it, his inability to make sound decisions derailed what could have been a smoother road to greatness. One of the most pivotal influences in his boxing journey was trainer Ann Wolfe, a former champion herself, renowned for her toughness and uncompromising approach. Under Wolfe's guidance, Kirkland displayed a frightening level of ferocity. Together, they produced some of his most devastating performances. However, Wolfe's absence from his corner often coincided with his worst nights. In fact, the only time Kirkland had been knocked out before facing Canelo was when Wolfe was not training him, a shocking first-round stoppage against Nobuhiro Ishida, a relatively light puncher from Japan. Going into the Alvarez fight, once again, Wolfe was absent. For many observers, that fact alone spelled disaster. By contrast, Saul Canelo Alvarez represented the opposite narrative. Born in Guadalajara, Mexico, the youngest of 8 children, he had fought his way from obscurity to superstardom through discipline, skill, and an almost obsessive dedication to his craft. With his red hair, stoic demeanor, and devastating punching power, Canelo had become the new face of Mexican boxing, following in the footsteps of legends like Julio Cesar Chavez. Despite his youth, only 24 years old at the time of the fight, Canelo had already amassed a wealth of experience against some of the best fighters in the world. His lone loss to Mayweather had taught him valuable lessons about patience, defense, and composure, lessons he had applied to every fight since. The matchup against Kirkland was more than just a test. It was a chance to demonstrate that those lessons had elevated him from a rising talent into a complete fighter. The bell rang for round 1, and almost immediately the fight exploded into chaos. Kirkland charged at Alvarez like a man possessed, throwing wild combinations and attempting to overwhelm his opponent with sheer volume. It was the kind of reckless aggression that had made him a feared opponent, but also the same recklessness that left him exposed. Canelo, calm and calculated, absorbed the early storm. With his guard tight and his feet planted, he waited patiently for openings. Kirkland's punches landed sporadically, but each miss provided Alvarez with valuable information. Then, midway through the round, Canelo struck back. A perfectly timed right hand followed by a vicious left hook sent Kirkland crashing to the canvas. The crowd roared. Kirkland, dazed but defiant, rose to his feet and stumbled forward. He wasn't finished yet, but the tone of the fight had already been set. Canelo smelled blood, and the predator within him began to emerge. If the first round was chaos, the second was calculation. Kirkland, still undeterred, pressed forward once again, determined to break Alvarez with sheer will. But Canelo, now fully in rhythm, began dissecting his opponent with surgical precision. His body shots thudded like sledgehammers, sapping Kirkland's energy, while his counters landed with frightening accuracy. Every time Kirkland lunged forward, Alvarez met him with a combination. A sharp left hook. A brutal right to the ribs. A snapping uppercut that snapped Kirkland's head back. The Mandingo warrior showed incredible heart, absorbing the punishment and continuing to swing, but his punches lacked the sting of earlier exchanges. The tide had fully turned. The difference in class was undeniable. Kirkland had heart, but Canelo had both heart and skill. Every movement was deliberate, every punch placed with purpose. The Mexican star wasn't just fighting to win, he was fighting to make a statement. By the third round, the end felt inevitable. Kirkland, though still charging forward, was visibly slowing down. His punches no longer carried the same menace, while Alvarez's shots grew sharper and more punishing. Then came the decisive moment, one of the most brutal and memorable knockouts in modern boxing history. Early in the round, Canelo unleashed a monstrous right uppercut that sent Kirkland staggering backward. The crowd erupted, sensing the finish. Alvarez, composed and merciless, stalked forward. Feigning a jab to the body, Canelo suddenly uncoiled a devastating overhand right. The punch landed flush on Kirkland's jaw with a thunderous crack. Kirkland's body froze for an instant before crumbling to the canvas, his head spinning as if it had been struck by lightning. The Mandingo warrior lay motionless, and for a chilling moment, the entire stadium seemed to hold its breath. Canelo, ever respectful, stood over his fallen opponent and checked to make sure he was breathing. It was the kind of knockout that ended not only fights but also careers, and everyone knew it. The referee waved off the fight. The crowd erupted into pure jubilation, their cheers echoing throughout the stadium. In just 3 rounds, Alvarez had delivered a performance that would be replayed, discussed, and remembered for years to come. For Canelo Alvarez, the victory over James Kirkland was more than just another win. It was a definitive statement, perhaps the most electrifying performance of his career up to that point. He had shown composure under pressure, precision in execution, and a ruthless instinct that separated him from the rest. Critics who had doubted his ability to handle high-stakes fights were silenced. The knockout was replayed across highlight reels worldwide, cementing his reputation as one of boxing's most dangerous finishers. Reflecting after the fight, Alvarez remained humble. "I respect James Kirkland for his spirit," he said, "but tonight was my moment. I did what I set out to do." It was a simple statement, yet one that encapsulated the essence of the night: respect for the opponent, but complete belief in himself. For James Kirkland, however, the fight marked the beginning of the end. Though he would continue to box afterward, the aura of invincibility he once carried was shattered. His career, already marked by inconsistency and turmoil, never truly recovered from the brutality of that night in Houston. Despite his unmatched heart and aggression, he simply could not withstand the technical brilliance and power of a fighter like Alvarez. In many ways, the fight encapsulated the contrasting paths of the two men. Canelo, disciplined and focused, ascended to greatness. Kirkland, wild and unpredictable, was undone by the very chaos that defined him. The battle between Saul Canelo Alvarez and James Mandingo Warrior Kirkland remains one of the most unforgettable nights in boxing's modern era. It had everything fans crave: raw intensity, back-and-forth exchanges, dramatic knockdowns, and a knockout so devastating it belongs in the pantheon of the sport's greatest finishes. But more than that, it was a story of contrasts. A calm predator versus a reckless warrior. Discipline versus chaos. Precision versus raw aggression. On May 9, 2015, in Houston, Texas, those contrasts played out under the bright lights of Minute Maid Park, and the result was a performance for the ages. For Alvarez, it was a milestone on the road to becoming one of the greatest fighters of his generation. For Kirkland, it was a brutal reminder of the unforgiving nature of the sport he loved. Boxing, at its best, is not just about punches and knockouts. It is about stories, about men who step into the ring carrying their pasts, their flaws, and their dreams. On that night, Canelo Alvarez and James Kirkland told a story that fans will never forget, a story etched forever into the history of boxing.